what will be your one thing or your two things maybe before you start on your presentation?
Yeah.
We've got a lot of couples that are within our midst, and all of these couples, I think for some of them, they're starting off their journeys in business, and for some of them, they don't know whether they should be starting. And with your journey so far, what is the kind of like nuggets that you can potentially give them to say, well, when you're married and you're young and you want to do business, either maybe you're old actually, it doesn't really matter where you are in life, but doing business as a family for the purposes of your family, what are the nuggets that you think you can give, be like maybe from a female perspective? Is it good? Is it bad? And yeah, how can they navigate that? Like one or two things.
Thank you so much for the question. Talk about putting me nicely on the spot. Well, my first biggest thing that I generally share with my students as well is that when you're going into business together, you need to actually understand the discipline apart. So, what do I
Right.
mean by that? Whenever you and I would go to different sorts of training, coming back to share the information was not the same as actually being in the room, getting the information firsthand. So, I really
Mm,
believe that as a couple, life partners, however you do life together, I do believe that you should go to the training room together. And the reason I say that is that you're going to hear something, and your person, regardless of how close they are to you, they're going to hear something entirely different. At some given point, it's almost going to feel like you were in two different rooms because we see the world differently. We understand certain things differently. And the power in going together is that when you are sharing your notes, if there's some sort of clarification or some navigation through some information, you can spring it off of each other. So I believe that's the power of going at it together. The second nugget, if there are couples, anything like you and I out there, and let me give a quick description of what that is. If you're both headstrong, you're both determined to make life win, don't sit together in the classroom. Go together, but sit apart. Why? Because then you are not going to frustrate each other. And that's one of the biggest things that I learned in the training room with Taurai. Is that I'd be sitting there, if I didn't hear something, I would ask. And then he's like, shh, you know what? Let's not talk now because we're gonna miss something. And then if we miss something, we're both gonna be in the pickle together. And I'm like, if I've just missed this part, I don't care what I hear after this because I'm stuck here. And this is where I believe that if you are going at it together, understand who you are. Because if you understand your strength, when you get into the class, you'll be in two different spaces. When you get out of the class, you'll be able to share with each other, learn, and grow. In fact, I want to give a quick little 30-second story around point number two. When TJ and I realized that we were good together in the classroom, but better apart, there was a training that I dragged him to. It was a sales and leadership training. And throughout that weekend, no one actually realized that we were married, in as much as during the break, I would be either smooching him or holding his hand or checking that he's okay. No one saw that part, right? Until the Sunday afternoon, Taurai had a bit of a mind shift, and I threw my 20-cent piece out there. And then the next best thing, I said, yes, baby, take one for the team. And then all of a sudden, people thought these two got hooked up during this intense training. I'm like, no, we married. Then they said, but if you married, why were you not together? So I said, because I'll see him at home. Because we learn differently, and therefore we are able to tap into those superpowers. So those are the two quick nuggets that I can bring to the surface right now and share with everybody that is listening.
awesome, awesome. The last question that I've got for you, Jen. I come from a multi-faceted family in terms of nationality. Within my family, there is Zimbabweans. Within my family, there's Malawians, and there's lots and lots of stuff in terms of how people just perceive things and how we do things and how we do life. And there you are. You also comes through with a Zulu background, Irish background, and all of that mixed together. Um, my question to you is how do you manage the outside world with 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 being married to a different race? And the reason why I'm asking this, Jenny, is because I think so. I've been labeled before. So people have literally said to me, "Hey, you got married to a colored chick because you got money," and I was like, "What? What money?" and
Tell me too, please.
and I asked the what money, but without even going through the what money. And then I said, I think you have a perception that I've got money because I play in the real estate space. But you know what? I actually found my wife way before real estate. And I could see the rain that went on them. But I think this is the perception that we've got with couples that we see out there. And, you know, how do you deal with that when it comes through? And has it ever come through to you harder than potentially what we kind of like used to, because we get this all the time, right? We get this. It comes in a settled manner. It comes in very harsh, and sometimes we're like, yo, that was so painful. I mean, we're not colorblind in our relationship. We do see, what is around us, but from a relationship perspective, we don't see color. Our family is what it is. But Jen, how is it different for you? Because for me, it feels like I get it hard all the time.
You know, it's such an interesting question that you ask. You know, I
By the way,
find
we're still
that,
going to go into presentation, right? I'm just
yeah,
asking
no,
some questions.
maybe you should. You're already getting me into that somber space, because even putting that presentation together was very hard. But I really feel that from the mistakes that I've made as an entrepreneur, right through my entrepreneurial journey, that people can learn from. So it's a good space. It's a good space. It is a good question that you ask. Firstly, the one thing I like to draw is that my mom and my dad, their families, one was too white for the other one, and the other one thought this one is too black for me. And if we have to really put things down to genetics, I'm technically the first generation colored, and what we call colored. So with my granny's people, they were Zulu, but my granddad was colored, and there was such conflict in the family that my mom barely interacted with her siblings, because the siblings ill-treated her because she was the mlungu in the family. She was towards the last born. I think she was second to last born, right? And so, in with that conflict, she didn't really grow up with her family. She was She was there, but she was disconnected. My sister also felt, bore the brunt thereof, because she actually spoke Zulu only until she went to school, and school was the first place she spoke English. So that was just a mixed bag. And then there's my dad. His mom is Irish born, South African settled, married to some guy that's got Mauritian something, something sort of blood, what, right? And now in that family as well, there were the darker Staffords and there were the lighter Staffords. I'm just about the darker Stafford that you may find. And then you'd
Hey, I thought
also
I got
find
a
there was
yellow
a,
phone, man. You're
imagine
disappointing
you,
me.
hey, you got the worst end of the stick. And you'd find conflict there. And when these two came together, I remember my mom saying to me the one day, Jenna, a person is not defined but by what they look like, but by
Right.
what's in their hearts. And for me, that's how I've always seen my siblings. And so when it came to, getting into a relationship with somebody outside of my race group, outside of the culture, outside of the country, I mean, these are different layers, right? I did get a couple of, oh, so you're marrying somebody, you're marrying into money. And I'm like, oh, no, no, not really, you know. And I found myself initially because, you know, being very aggressive growing up, I would literally want to throw my hey. But when he found me, I'd already bought my 2 bed, 1 bath. I was earning a rental income, and then I'm like, why am I defending myself in accolades? And over
Mm,
time, I must admit, the one thing that I truly thank God for is that you have to remind me sometimes about color, because I've somehow managed to live past it because it simply doesn't matter to me. And then I hear sometimes, and I want to say my people, you know, my colored friends say to me, I would rather marry somebody within the colored race because at least I know the colored culture. And I'm like, sharp, do you, boo? But you know, me and mine, we happy. So yeah, I
mm.
just want to kind of give it from the different angles. But yes, Taurai, I do sometimes get the you married money. You know, Zimbabweans are very clever. I get all of these different statements, and I'm like,
Thank you, thank
whatever.
you, thank you.
You know, so then I get to this point of like, okay, cool, guys, whatever it is what it is. So
Yeah,
yeah, it can be a bit of a challenge. uh, I'm grateful to God though that it is not as much now as it was back then.
yeah, yeah. So Jen, I think it is a fact that me and you's life to where we are right now, we are faced with maybe a notch higher in terms of issues. You know, for some people, they're married, they're Zulu and Zulu, you know, kind of like you understand each other. But there's a level of issues that any
Yes.
family has. And for us, there's another layer of complexity of how people see us. There's another layer of complexity on how we just see different things because of backgrounds and things like that. But I also want to believe that everyone has their own set of issues.
Yeah.
And as one grows as an individual, and when you bring in someone else, that's a double issue. And you kind of like need to navigate that into whatever you want to be. And today you are going to be talking about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship is comes through with its own sets of problems. And
Absolutely.
I think thanks a lot for engaging me. I know that I've taken in a bit of your time. Are you happy to take it away?
I am happy to take it away.
Awesome stuff. Right, ladies and gentlemen, if you got any questions, write them in there. And I see we are back on Facebook. We are live on YouTube, so that's great. I am going to play a short clip, and then we will be back. And Jenna is going to take us into her presentation. Good.
Awesome stuff. I want to say a very good evening to everybody. I trust you guys are doing really well. I'm going to get into it and see how I can accelerate through some of my time that has been eaten up, right? So, my name is Genevieve Stafford Jack, as Taurai has shared. And tonight I'm going to be sharing with you on how to make failure your best friend. I'm going to be talking through a couple of entrepreneurial mistakes that I keep hearing within my coaching business. And I keep hearing that on, it has not stopped. It's 4 years in, and I still hear the same sort of questions. So I feel that tonight I want to get real with where we are, right? Some of you may not like me after this one. Some of you may love me after this one, but I'm okay with whichever road that you choose, because tonight we're here just to see how could we build and share with you and perhaps accelerate your journey within the entrepreneurial space. So, yes, I am an entrepreneur. When I started out in my business, I really just was focused on training and coaching, particularly within the information and communication space. But I'm going to share more about that with you in a moment. What I would like to do is just really get to the crux of what we're going to be talking about today. And I've called it hitting rock bottom. And I'm trusting that by the end of at least 30 minutes, you would then understand why I would call it hitting rock bottom. Tonight, the key takeaways that I'm going to be talking about, or that you can take away is one that I've called the rude awakening. The second, thinking like an employee. Three, what does rock bottom mean to you? And then what? And because I enjoy interaction, I'm that gal that likes to have some sort of comments coming her way. I want to hear from you in the comments field. I promise I'm going to pick up some of your comments as I go along the way, but I would love that you interact with me so that at least I know I'm not only just talking to a computer up in this space. So, the rude awakening. The rude awakening. Why would I want to call it the rude awakening? Well, I'm going to give you a bit of background as to why I call it the rude awakening. Life will throw curveballs at you. And I want you to remember this part, right? That life will throw curveballs at you. And you know what happens? It happens when you least expect it. I remember some time back there was a father and a daughter talking, and the daughter was attacked by somebody and actually cut on her arm. And this guy says, "But why did you go and get cut when I don't have money?" And for a moment I was like, "But wait, she didn't call the thugs to attack her." But this is what happens in life. We go through that moment of, I was ill prepared. I didn't see that curveball coming. And I want to find out from you in the comments below, do you think that failure defines you? All right. I want to hear that in the beginning, right? Because at the end of the day, the reality of life is that you will fail, but does it define you? If you say, yes, it defines you, tell me, what do you mean? If you say, no, it does not define me, I'd love that you share with me what that actually means. And while you're typing that out, I just want to take you through a very, 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 very quick story. When I started out, I was done with matric. Yes, matric. Or was it grade 12 these days, they say, right? So I was done with grade 12. And after that, I got my grade 12 certificate. And then what? There was so much emphasis put in, get your matric so that you can get a decent job. And everywhere that I applied, they all looked for experience. Now in school, we did stock taking. I was one of those little hustlers. I could find something to do. I remember even with the Rugby World Cup, I was selling some wares outside. I was one of those people. But in life will throw you curveballs that you don't really know is coming your way. And I need you to remember that, right? So nonetheless, I eventually got this job as a ShopRite cashier checker, a ShopRite checkers cashier, to much excitement up in here. I worked for 3 days at 7.50 an hour. The other 2 days, I got a job as a cleaner, and I worked for 40 Rand for the day. So over time, I was like, there has to be more to life than this. I went to work. I was diligent. I did what I needed to do. I was working in the heart of Cape Town. People would poke fun. Some of the Cape Townians, I love you guys, but you messed with my accent, eh? I came from Durban. I didn't think I had an accent until I went back to Durban after being in Cape Town, and I realized, hey, I got an accent. And over time, I enjoyed, I rolled with the punches. I learned what people needed to do. And the moment I spoke Afrikaans, I was that girl that spoke Afrikaans that they taught you at school, right? And I remember one day we were working out a menu going to youth camp, and somebody says we'll have bunchies. And for a moment I'm like, what? We're gonna have, say what? And she said bunchies, and I'm like, what's bunchies? And then she says, oh, Jen, that's the simplest Afrikaans word. It's beans. So I said, oh, you mean boinkies? So, I was that girl trying to navigate life. But nonetheless, as I continued to move forward, I found an early development childhood course. And then I came home and I said to my sister, in the newspaper, because it was still the newspaper back then, it was not the World Wide Web. It was called a junk mail, and we would find everything and anything that we needed in the junk mail, right? And I said to my sister, "Oh, I found this course, and I also found that locally there's a lot of babysitting jobs and au pairing type of jobs. And I feel like if I get into this early childhood development course, I'll be able to do au pairing." Now I'm introducing new terminologies into the house. But fast forward, I decide, well, au pairing, this thing is for me, and I'm going ahead with it. And so I au paired in the Netherlands. I had to eventually educate everybody around me what this was, right? I au paired in the Netherlands. I traveled a few European countries. But God was really good to me, and He still is, because I celebrated my 21st birthday in London, in the United Kingdom, with my sister and friends that had turned family. And I realized in life that, yes, life will throw you curveballs, but you can also dance a little bit with life, because it was not without bumps in the road did I get there. And I want you to remember something. When you introduce something new to your family, some will embrace it and some will ask you, what is going on with you? So, nonetheless, as an au pair, I traveled around Europe, and whenever I was in a different country, I would write on a postcard and send it to the company that actually facilitated me going abroad. Fast forward, I get back home, I share with everybody that I'm there. Boom, I landed a sales consultant course, selling girls just like myself, bright eyed, bushy tailed, the dream of au pairing, the dream of going to explore other countries as an au pair. And when I did that, little did I know that was going to set off quite a few things. I got into the call center after some time, and eventually, before leaving work on the 28th of February in 2017, I was a QA manager. Uh, for me, it was like, oh, wow, it's not that I'd reached the pinnacle of life, but starting off from where I was, there's all the things that I needed to do in life that I followed. I followed go and get a good job. I follow don't get unnecessary credits. I follow don't just get a cell phone contract. I followed all these little things. In fact, I remember when I was just about to buy my car, they said to me, uh, you don't have much of a history going on here. Could you just go and open up an Edgar's account even for 3 months? And I'm thinking to myself, what? You gotta be kidding me, Like, how do you discriminate against a 25-year-old like that because she didn't take out any debt? And I was that girl that formulated things in the best possible way, because coming from where I came from, we were always warned, don't get into trouble, don't do this and don't do that, right? And so as life continued, I got myself a 2 bed, 1 bath. I did up the flat, I stayed in that flat. And you know where that came from? It came from playing Monopoly. I had this idea that if in Monopoly I can learn the streets of Joburg, because when I came up to Joburg, I was quite shocked that there's a Bree Street and a Commissioner and all of that. And I'm like, but hey, why do I know that? It's because I learned it in Monopoly. But nonetheless, from Monopoly, I learned that there could be rentals that could happen, right? You see, in my household, we rented. My mom was not blessed with that opportunity where she had enough funds, my mom and dad, to actually buy property. My sister was the first one to have bought property. And there, the runt of the family, the baby of the family, is now buying her own 2 bed, 1 bath. And I can't say again that life was smooth, because I had to tick all of these proverbial boxes that kept moving. And then I learned, you know what? Everything that we do, we need to be proud of these achievements and accolades. Now, I want to hear from you in the comments the achievements and accolades that actually make you feel like I've got square shoulders. I want to hear from you. How does that make you feel? Because for me, it makes me feel like I've got broad square shoulders. As short as I am, all 1.56 1.156 centimeters of me, I I still feel like I can stand tall, not from a pride perspective, but from a very proud, accomplished perspective. Because again, not that I want to play a racial card. For colored girls, it's not easy. For colored girls, we're expected to have 2 or 3 kids from 2 or 3 different dads, be beat up, be drunkards with rollers and stuff in our hair. Like, that cliche, it makes me cringe. But this is what sometimes people look at, whatever their tint of their glasses are. This is how there's a perception of what it should look like. And there I am having ticked all these boxes. But that's not the rude awakening. I share all of this to say to you, my husband and I, before we even met each other, we did our side hustles, Nyana. He found me renting somewhere else, collecting rent. He found me with a small little side hustle. I was that girl that started from Avon, Justine. I almost sold Tupperware. It wasn't, it was for me, it was not quite there yet. But there was a lot of small little things I would do just to get a little bit more. And I found over time that with my husband and I, when we got together, we did a number of businesses, and then my rude awakening happened. My rude awakening is that the chicken farming left us 5 million under. Should that define me for where I am, having achieved the things that I have in my lifetime? Should it define who I am and where I'm going to? I wonder. For me at that time, I can't tell you that I was humbled by the fact that I'd lost so much money. But what I can tell you this is that I was shattered. I was mad as hell. I was angry. All the emotions except humility. Because at that time, I'm one of those like the FBI. Like what I earned and what I would accumulate, I would do it on such the DL that I remember sometimes, this is a funny story, right? I had bought a Beamer 1 Series, and because I really liked the car and not because of what people think BMW drivers are. And the one person said to me, you know what? You dress like that, driving such a nice car. And for a moment, I was like, dress like, what do you mean? Dress like, what do you mean? And I'm like, this is who I am. There's nothing spocherig or flashy about me. I am who I am. So I remember not broadcasting, this is what I earn or this is what I get. So the humiliation wasn't really there at the time, but I was embarrassed. Not even my sister, who is my confidant and my prayer partner, knew about that curveball at that time. I could barely speak to Taurai, let alone look at him in the eye. And I did what any logical person would do. I pretended it didn't happen. Like for all of 5 minutes, I pretended that didn't happen. Because I'm just thinking to myself, no, not on my watch. How could that possibly happen? No. And then I lost it. I was emotional. I was mad as heck. And for a moment, I wanted to close my eyes and just the world open up and swallow me. I was mad, ladies and gents. So I want to ask you very, very quickly, if you can indulge me for this moment, where you sitting, right? It's going to take less than 30 seconds. What I'd love you to do, just for a moment, right, is to close your eyes. And I want you to think about what is your worst case scenario if you lost so much money. I don't want to put a price tag to it because we all know the 5 million story, but let's get past the 5 million story. I want to know, close your eyes and think, what is the worst case scenario of you losing a lot of money? Very quickly open your eyes, go into the comments, and I want you just to throw me a couple of ideas. what you think would be the worst case scenario that you would do if you lost a lot of money. While you're typing, I want to share with you, when you are in the situation, even this thing that you have typed out, you will forget. Do you know what? You won't even remember parts of the thought, because for a while, and this is what happened to me, it's happened to a number of people that I've spoken to that have lost huge amounts of money. For a short while, all you do is you feel numb. You feel like this is not happening to me. And you go in, much like this guy, you kind of walk with your head in the sand, pretending it's not happening. But when you immobilize and you can't go and do something, then you realize, flip, actually, this thing is going down like this. I had to go through life coaching really just to compartmentalize and shift things away from where they were, because they were all mashed, and TJ couldn't breathe. Then I would charge at him for breathing, like some days I'm just like, don't even breathe near me, please. You're taking up my oxygen. Just think about that for a moment. And that's what I call the rude awakening, because sometimes you just are not going to be prepared for what that curveball does to you. But what I'd love you to do is to remember these 2 points. Get mad, but don't stay there. I once read in a magazine, when you're done in the pity pot, get up, flush, and wash your hands. And I remember in that state, in as much as I could not, but the more I went through life coaching, the more I was able to see beyond, and decided, and because it has to be a choice. And I decided at that point, I choose life. I choose success. I choose financial solvency. And in as much as those words are hard to swallow at that time, because trust me, they are, I remembered, if I've got a choice, I can still make things happen. The second thing is that failure doesn't define you, but it does define you. I hope you get that one. Failure doesn't define you, but it does define you. And with that, from those lessons, there's something that I really want to say, is that oftentimes we ask ourselves, how am I going to get out of this mess? Just because my path is different doesn't mean that I'm lost. Just because this curveball hit me for a 1, it doesn't mean I'm out. And I find that my approach to life, when I get this rude awakening, is that I take the lesson from the pain, where I don't want to be in that situation anymore. However, what I do is, I don't focus on that. I don't want to be in that situation anymore. I focus on, what can I do today in the present to change tomorrow, because I have learned from yesterday. So be careful when you are making your plans and setting your goals. Many people say, I don't want to work at an 8 to 5 job anymore. I'm so over these people. The environment is so toxic. And there's a list like this of all the things you don't want. However, when I bring you back to the present moment and I ask you, so what is it that you want? And you can't string a sentence together, except, I want to leave a legacy for my children. And then I ask, how would you like to go about doing that? You see, sometimes we get so hurt by the past that we say, we don't want the past, we don't want the past. Sometimes the past hurts us so much that we say, oh, let's forgive and let's forget, because at the end of the day, this is what's going to make us better people. And we're continuously looking in the future, and we neglect the gift, which is now. So I want to say to you, or rather, should I say, I want to ask you, have you had a rude awakening? And I'm sure that many of us have had multiple rude awakenings, right? I want to ask you this from the bottom of my heart. Where you need to lend from the past or potentially lend from the future, don't forget now, because it's in your now that you can change things around. And why am I so confident of this? My entrepreneurial exploits over the last 4 years has put me in situations and led me down paths that I would never in this lifetime believe. If somebody told me, Jen, through this looking glass, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, never would I have seen this picture. Okay? What is it that I do in business right now? I'm a property entrepreneur. You know, people that talk about, hey, I'm a wholesaler or they are sourcing agents, it's just two different words for the same thing. You find deals, you package them, and you sell them to an investor with money. It sounds easy, right? Or should I say it's simple process, but it's not easy when you need to action it. You know, my husband and I, past 60 deals, we needed to analyze to get to the one that brought home. He brought it home in a joint venture with 1,000 Rand deposits. Now, look, ladies and gents, I get this so regularly, so often. So I'm going to already answer the question for some of you that don't know. You know, if I wasn't part of the process, I would have said this guy is smoking his socks. What I'm blessed and fortunate with is that Andrew was part of the process. So it's not even the Jack family that can embellish. At least Andrew, as a coach, would say, no, 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 guys. Y'all were not smoking your socks. It really happened. But you see, in this, from the January to the August, we were plowing the field in different ways. Like TJ said in the beginning, we cried, we laughed, we were angry, we were all things together with each other. I pulled out of coaching. I told him, can you just go to your coach? It's the all boys club. I was frustrated. I was like, ah! Right? Eventually, with the life coaching, I was dealing with too many things because I jumped ship without a plan. I was done with the working environment and I jumped without a plan in the middle of growing debt. Not my best move. But you know what? In hindsight, when I look at it, I am thankful that I did crazy things like that, because it now, the failure doesn't define me, but it defines me. In property wholesaling, there were deals that we went through. There were people that we met. There were negotiations. There were property investors that told us, yeah, wada, me, I've got 5 million, what. When the deal came to the table, it chased people away and then it attracted those that needed to be in our space. So from a property entrepreneur point of view, do I understand what it feels like to bleed? Where some days I would sit down and say, you know, baby, had we not done the farm, imagine what our property business would look like right now. And then on the other hand, I'm like, no, what regret is this, Macy? You are here now. There are many strategies. You need to put your big girl panties on, get into the property investing strategies, and blow the socks off of it. And that's what we do, or rather, should I say, that's what I do within property wholesaling / being a sourcing agent. But I'm also blessed to be part of different collaborations in property investing strategies. And that's why I call myself a property entrepreneur, because I'm not just a wholesaler. I broker deals. I sit down, we do no money down deals, we make things pop. Over and above that, the next two things are really personal to me. I don't usually just talk about it. I've only ever spoken about the next two things on my YouTube channel and to some of my students. But when I am not doing the wholesaling sourcing thing and COVID is happening thing, what am I doing? I'm playing on technology. I'm a YouTube manager. Yes, it's a thing. Can you imagine? It's a thing, guys. It is a thing where I listen to content. I optimize the content to be searched and I help grow channels, right? But growing a channel is just like everything else. It takes time until you just get to that one secret sauce and one video goes viral and then next best thing, you're operating on a big channel. I remember actually not so long ago, the person that I do the managing of the YouTube channel for, she said to me, Jen, your SEO is on another level. And she sent the stats of how the channel had grown. For me, at that time, I was like, wow. And guess what? This is a new skill. It is 1 year old because in the midst of Kovovo last year in June, here was I learning and understanding how it is to grow a YouTube channel. It is a lot of work. It looks romantic, but it's far from it. But why would I mention it to you today? Imagine 3 years into my entrepreneurial journey, COVID hits. And now the training and coaching that I would do on an information and communications technology level in classrooms is now taken away. What do? I step up and I find something to take its place. I remember one day I sat down and I had to be true to myself and I wrote my husband a letter and I said, babe, there are just certain things that a girl must do. And the long and short was I found an online testing job for a global company. But how did I find it? I want to share what I'm gonna tell you in a moment why I share these things, right? Because you can do it. You can find your side hustle in things that are right in front of you. You can find how you are going to navigate and create things differently. And when I wrote my husband this letter, I had gone into YouTube one day and I'm like, what online jobs are suitable? I can't even remember what I was typing, right? And then I got this one guy talking. And then he mentioned about testing, and I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was a software tester before I left the working environment. So I went back onto YouTube and I said, software testing jobs online. Bam. And then I used what is a property skill. Actually, it's a life skill. I researched and I did my due diligence. I picked up a project. I got $78. And when that $78 hit my PayPal account, I was like, I'm not stopping here, guys. I want to withdraw it and I want to know I'm safe while I'm doing that, right? And then I withdrew that money. Who would have known that that 1,000 Rand would come in so handy when it did? And then I paused and I said, but what if I did this when I was working? What if I found a job that I was doing, that I'm currently doing, getting paid for by a boss, and I do this online for another company? What if I got 2 projects that month? What would 2,000 Rand extra look like? So I want to say to those of you that say, I want to do a course, but I can't afford it. I want to do this, but I don't have the money. I want to earn a little extra, but could you try maybe potentially go onto YouTube? The thing that you do, admin jobs online, project management jobs online, something online to see what you could try. Do your research, do your due diligence, see what it would look like. Because right now, I'm a qualified QA certified tester, whatever the heck that means, for a global company. And one afternoon, like for about an hour or so, I was like, oh, teacher, I need your phone quickly to do this. I need to set up this scenario and that scenario. He didn't know what was going on, right? And eventually, when I said to him, you know what I was testing that day with that well-known app, that was my, and then I took my phone, naughty me that I am, and I showed him. I'm like, hey, Z, PayPal. That's what I was doing, and he chuckled. Why? Because I decided that I'm not going to only talk about it. I'm going to put it into action to make it happen. In the training and coaching space, before COVID, as I shared, the information and communications technology space, business analysis, software testing, and all of those things, that is what I would do maybe 6 or 8 days a month. And I would earn a nice takeaway with that, because that was my base for being a wholesaler, because I still needed to service creditors while I'm busy wholesaling. I still needed to service a couple of things without getting gray hairs while I was wholesaling, right? And I needed to keep this one picture in mind. It's nice to put it's nice to be dedicated, but it's a very different space to put all your eggs in one basket. Because when it's taken away, what do? In the training and coaching space, I do a lot of life coaching. And then I ran away for a very long time from property training and coaching because I was like, I had my own limiting beliefs, story for another day. But eventually, when I caved in and I said, okay, cool, I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to make it work for me, right? And so in property, I then decided my rules, my game, my rules. So what I decided to do is like everything small scale. If somebody is going to wait for them, I'm not going to convince the money out of your purse. I'm not going to be doing gymnastics and those things. What I am going to be doing is teaching you how to get things done. What I am going to be doing is putting you under pressure to take action. What I am going to be doing is to be that coach like a rash all up in your business. Why? Because I've seen too many of my colleagues that we'd gone into coaching with have credit line for days at the bank, have some sort of inheritance somewhere, and this is what they did. And guess what, guys? I want to be very frank with you. I grew resentful for those, and I'm just thinking, do you know what you are sitting in? And then I'm like, okay, Genevieve, snap out of it. My life coaching lessons kicked in. I had to be a nice person. And then I decided, okay, just stay focused. And with the property training and coaching, Rieta and TJ was like, Jen, let's do this collab. Let's do this thing. Let's offer as much to people as possible. Let's have all these different facets. You in wholesaling, TJ is about negotiating and business. I'm student accommodation. And we sat down, we wrote the dream, and we built the dream. And this is why I'm thankful to God that right now I'm in a conference sharing in a platform that was once a dream, that is now a reality. And I want to say thank you so much to Rieta and TJ and the team for accepting me, warts and all. I promise I am coming to a close this soon. TJ ate my time, ne? I see him. So in this next point, I share all of what I do as an entrepreneur to also bring to you from an employee perspective. Firstly, there's nothing wrong with being an employee. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, think about it. I have an international job. I have a global job that I do from the comfort of my home. I may not be involved in meetings and whatever. I get my tasks, I do it, I move on. I'm happy when I earn in dollars. When my PayPal goes ding, I've also got that money beep. I loved what Corin said last night because I've got that money beep. And I'll tell you which money is the money beep because of the different avenues that the money comes in, right? Now I want to share with you something. As an entrepreneur, you leave work to do a couple of things, but how defined is your journey? Often we get into entrepreneurship, but we still think like an employee. What do I mean by that? As an employee, no, you've got maybe a micromanager, at work, managing all the small little things that you do. But as an entrepreneur, you don't have that. You need to be able to manage and be productive in your own space. You're not productive, you don't get paid. As an employee, you're not productive, you are productive, you get paid. What will be penalized at the end of the day? Your KPIs. As an entrepreneur, you don't have KPIs. So just be careful of when we start thinking like an entrepreneur, like an employee in the space of an entrepreneur. I had decided that every day can be payday. So I've got 4 streams that will come into me at any given point of the day. In fact, yesterday, a PayPal beep came in. I was as sick as they came yesterday, probably a 1-day bug. I was throwing up in the morning, not myself. And then there was a PayPal beep that came in. I'm like, oh, at least the money beep can make me smile after throwing my whole lungs up. But as an employee, many times we spend knowing that the next payday is there. But as an entrepreneur, we don't have that privilege. But the privilege we do have is to create many more paydays. So our mind is not as an employee thinking every 30 days. Again, like I shared with you, no problem being an employee. I mean, after all, guys, one of my income streams, I'm a contractor somewhere, right? So I can't exactly shoot myself in the foot. But the beauty of being a contractor for that global company is that when I pick up a project, I do. If I don't get paid. And that's my bottom line. The third thing that I would like to also just leave with you in this particular thought, thinking like an employee. An employee, oftentimes, we go through the processes as we should. We do what the manager says. At the end of the year, we do our KPIs. We are either underperforming, we just average, or we overperforming, and life continues like that. Whereas, as an entrepreneur, you broker deals, whether it's going to be long term or short term. One of the deals that I brokered as COVID hit pays me dividends every quarter. But what did it need when COVID hit? It needed my skill on the table. So we put a no money down deal. And then we said, okay, cool, what are we going to do about this? And every quarter we get dividends paid out to us because of the no money down deal in property that we put together. You too can do that. The skills that you have. I mean, this evening I could have been teaching full blown on getting started in property investing. Ladies and gents, where you are on YouTube, down in the comments below, I've got links to 9 hours of that content. You can go and get that skill. Tonight, I just want to bring emotion a little bit closer to you. I want to bring some of that dream and some of that fears just a little bit closer to you, because this is what often I find in the class. It's not so much about the skill, it's about the fear of what if I don't get it. So I trust that you are with me on this one. So I believe that you can do it. I believe that instead of being like me for a while, I was thinking like an employee, and when I didn't get paid, I was still looking after for the 30th to see, maybe I can make a plan, something nearer. But thinking like an employee just sets you up for failure. It's when you hit rock bottom that you start understanding life differently. It's when you hit rock bottom do you start finding legit side hustles that you can get into. It's when you hit rock bottom that you actually say, I'm able to say, back 2 slides, that I am working in property, in technology, and with people. And in all different aspects, I'm helping people. And that ticks my boxes. Nothing stops you from finding a legit side hustle. In fact, a student of mine sent me a message yesterday. She started selling perfume. She decided that that's going to be her economic freedom fund. Just putting it out there. She decided that she's going to do things differently. What stops you from doing that? Be careful not to hit rock bottom like I did and get emotional and fight and then take yourself out of the game and put yourself in a situation where, like, where to from here? Skill we can teach you for days, but it's you taking your leap of faith that actually puts you in a situation to say, okay, Jen, whether I take my leap of faith or not, now what? And in the now what, I just want to say, I have learned that when a curveball hits, it's not going to come with the warning. I have learned that there is no perfect path. I have learned that it doesn't exist. But what if for a moment, let's play devil's advocate. What if for a moment there was a perfect path? What if for a moment you found the way so that you can avoid a lot of mistakes and failures? What will your success teach you? It's a question, right? I'm not averse to success, but my biggest lessons have come from failures, from those mistakes that I've made. And so this is why I said just playing devil's advocate for that moment. I believe that where you are sitting right now, all the speakers that have spoken up until this point, and those that are still to come, you can learn from many of our mistakes. We can fast track you past our mistakes. But there's a brand new world waiting for you out there. Are you really ready to take action? Are you really ready to be in that space where you say, Jen, I don't have a side hustle. I don't know how to get one. Could you go onto YouTube and type what work you do and see if there's any online jobs? Do your due diligence around it. Accumulate something, right? That's a practical takeaway. You can, if you heard nothing this evening, that's a practical takeaway that you can take with you, right? So my question is, those of you that are wanting to move forward in the discipline of property investing, there's 9 hours of free content from the definition of the words of property right until closing a deal. And that shares with you the overall process. You can get started with that. There's a couple of people that have already called me and said, Jen, after we did that, I found this, I found that, and I found this. And they just come to me for ad hoc coaching calls. You can get started with that.
Okay, good stuff. So we're going to go ahead with the questions. And I am seeing a couple of people that are asking what is the email address there, and the email address that you guys can forward to Jenna. And that is hello@n5propertyvarsity.com. And you need to have with the heading that says group coaching. All right. Okay, good stuff. So
did that come through? I wasn't too sure if it came through when I typed it through.
Yeah, so we're gonna send that one out. Okay, good stuff. Some questions, right? Questions. I am going to go through all the way to the top. Someone says they are paralyzed somewhere when you are talking somewhere there. There was a comment that came from someone, and another comment that said, good one, just because my path is different, it does not mean I am out. Yeah, that's it. Kevin says forgive but forget. Yeah. Someone puts in a comment there, Jesse, multiple rude awakenings, and D says devastated, and Liz says, Jenna, your knowledge is amazing, you're such an inspiration. And Jesse, you're a force to reckon, and you have just solved some of my problems. Okay, so these are the people that are leaning in terms of where you've been talking about. Jen, I just love this topic. Following you, I've already accomplished so much. Well done. I don't want to think like an employee anymore. No more. Yeah. Welcome to the club. Pearl says, Jane, you were on. That looks like fire. Yeah, you was on fire. That's what it means. Powerful. Thank you so much. Right. Can you please get the email? The email we've dropped it in the comments there. Email's been dropped into the comments there. And this looks like a question. How do you plan your day? Ooh, Jesse got a question here. And this is an interesting one. It's about time management. How do you plan your day or manage your time with your multifaceted portfolio?
So thank you so much for the question, Jess. So what I find myself doing is that there's some things, if I can automate them, I will. So when you find me online and I say, hit me up in my calendar, I've gone into my online calendar and I've synced up my times with what's happening in another calendar to show available times so that if there's anything property that pitches up, it will be able to come through. So there's certain processes that I've put into place. The beauty is that if I go into my calendar and I actually wake up and I see, well, there's not much activity happening, I can block out the rest of my day, log on to the global company that I'm part of, pick up a project, see if there's a project available for me, and then be able to go through with it. Then another beauty of coaching people, I take advantage of this component because it really helps me a lot. If a student has called me, I usually ask my students, give me 48 hours at least, at minimum, right? Before you want to go and view a property, or before we have a coaching session, or whatever the case is. And I'll say, give me 48 hours so that when I do plan my day, if I see that I've got a coaching session at 11 o'clock, I'll block out the rest of the day. And then in that first 48 hours, I start seeing, can I go and view property? Can I go and do something related? Can I push some of my other students to actually have a session with me? Can I follow up and say, hey guys, does somebody need my help? So I find that that helps for most of the time. There is a time or two, Jess, I must admit, I do drop the ball and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, everybody. But fortunately, in the space that I'm in, my husband's able to catch some of my drop balls from time to time. Fortunately, it doesn't happen all the time, but it really means a lot of time management. And in the other business that I'm involved with my dear husband, he then busts my chops if I have not delivered the things I need to do. And he's like, please, Jen, get it done. So, so yeah, that's kind of an overview, Jess, on how I manage my space.
Mm. So, Jen, I think I want to hang on to that one. Um, your last comment now, the one that you just spoken about, and I lead a very fast-paced business with multiple facets in it, and you work for me sometimes, you work with me sometimes, and sometimes you just want to be the wife, right? And in some days
Yes.
you don't even want to see me at all. Um, and I just wanted to speak to that aspect, especially on the work, and especially for the fact that we work in a particular business together, and then we are at home together, and almost feels like sometimes we are in each other's hair. Um, any couples working together out there? Any tip, or how do you manage that so that it does not interfere with the relationship? Because when people are working together, it's either you're going to work amazingly well, or you're going to have some friction in between. But how do you kind of like create a wall, if you do at all, so that it doesn't fall over into the relationship? Because I think the two can maybe give power to each other, or can disempower each other.
For sure. Thank you for that question, TJ, or should I say, piggybacking on that question. You know my vibe lately. I just say to Taurai, all I want is you just to be my husband. Nothing else. It's not good, it's not bad. It's just an experience from my side that ever since we've met each other, we've had a side hustle of something going down. In fact, as our first business together was registering, we had just said, I do. We didn't even go on honeymoon, guys. We just went away for the weekend to the cradle of mankind. These two people come back. They now need to get used to each other in each other's space, and they're running a business. So I think from starting already day one as a married couple in business, starting day one or day zero as getting married and starting a business, for where I am right now, it's been 10 years of doing that. So I've just gotten to a point where I just want you as my husband. Like earlier at dinner, he said, oh, Jen, I've got a call at such and such a time. I'm like, I don't want to hear about M5 business now. Please, guys, I'm eating. It was a joke between the two of us, but there comes a point where You actually have to say, I'm cool to do this, or I'm cool to do that. And I don't always find it fun working with TJ. And then you want to come and whisper sweet nothings later on in my ear. And if something went down at work that I didn't quite like, I haven't disconnected yet. So I want to say, just be realistic if you're working as a couple. Understand your strengths. Going back to the initial points that we came in with, my husband is vibrant, he's dynamic, he runs a business. But at the end of the day, to me, he's not M5. He's first Taurai. In fact, he's not even Taurai first. He's babe. First, he's babe. And then when he's Taurai is when I am not happy with him. And then he becomes M5 when I'm like, I'm really not happy with you. So just understand the different levels where I enjoy the working with him. Sometimes there had to be a space where I eventually said, whoa, I can't do this anymore. I need to be on my own little trip somewhere else, because it's going to mess with our love relationship at a later stage. And because I know my warning signs, I don't want to mess with it at that given point. So in our own right, let's love property the way we do, and let's love each other the way we do as well.
Okay, good stuff. The last question that I'm going to ask, as we run out of time, we're 10 minutes just over the conference time of cutting off, and I do apologize. The last question that I'm going to ask, Jen, is that you've got all of these things happening for yourself, right? And I suppose it's your background that allows you to do that. And there is someone else who has no background at all, or a diversified background like yours. And they are watching here and they're like, they want to do this. And they're thinking maybe they want to have multiple streams. They know they can work from 6 o'clock to 2 o'clock. You remember when I used to work at Standard Bank, there were those guys that used to work at 6 o'clock until 2 o'clock. And that part of the day is free for them. What is the easiest thing that you think they can stumble upon? Like, just give me a step by step of how can they get their extra money, with, let's just say they're an administrator at a law firm right now, and they work 6 o'clock to 2 p.m. At first, 2, they are at home on their computer watching Netflix if they can.
Okay. So before I give that answer, I want to put things in perspective. The YouTube SEO manager takes the maximum to date 30 hours of my month, right? So if I want to break that up, it could be an hour a day. And if I don't want to be working weekends, we can say 2 hours every other day, right?
Mhm.
So that's 2 hours. The testing can take anything between 2 and 8 hours for the project to happen. And projects are not always available for South Africa, right? There's plenty, but it's not always available for South Africa. So if I take YouTube SEO manager and the testing, and I put that time together, that looks like a 40 to a 50-hour work week. So if I really want to take it back to employee, the employees, we're always looking at 40-hour work week. So just those two take me between 40 to 50 hours for the month. And then again, broken up into small pieces. So how I found the online testing job, like somebody that TJ has just given an example to, go onto YouTube, type online administration jobs, click
Right.
search. You start listening to people. You will start hearing a common thread. For what I do know about some of my administration friends that are both in the UK and the USA, they virtual assistants, they VAs.
Mm-hmm.
They're either putting some sort of structure together in somebody's diary, they're doing
Right.
small admin work, they're putting invoices and receipts and things like that together. Nothing astronomical, right? But as a VA, you'll have your pot of work. So if you've gone to work from 6 to 2, I was a 7 to 3 person. If you've gone to work from 6 to 2 and you get home and you already got time at 2:30, you can, as a VA, virtual assistant, start working from 2:30 to 5. And then you can continue with your normal stuff. You'll be able to have that conversation with the person that you're reporting to see how much work they're going to give you. And even in your conversation with them, you're able to say, I'm flexible for 2 to 3 hours a day. And 2 hours, for example, a day equals 10 hours for the week, equals 40 hours for the month. And you've already got a quarter of your paycheck potentially. And that could be paid to you in US, in euro, in pounds, or in rands, because there's a lot of e-commerce and a lot of virtual admin jobs that are done locally in South Africa.